Harshal, thank you very much for joining us on Money Control. I remember barely 6 months ago, I spoke to you when you raised 100 million at a valuation of 1 billion, entering the Unicorn Club. And 6 months later, you've raised another round of funding. So take us through the current round. Where does your valuation stand? And it looks like you've managed to more than double that in just 6 months. So take us through the round.
Yeah, I think in the last 1 year of pandemic, digital payments have seen a very rapid rise, and we have been a great beneficiary of that. Along with that, I think the new initiatives that we launched about a year and a half back on the lending side as well as on the neo-banking side, Razorpay and Razorpay Capital, both of which have seen very rapid scale up in the last 6 months. And because of that, our existing investors, both Sequoia and GSE, came back and wanted to do another round, given the increased growth in the company. So we raised another round of $160 million right now, led by existing investors. At the same time, the valuation has more than tripled. So we've raised this round at a valuation of a little higher than $3 billion.
Okay. And who are the other investors who participated in this round? Is it your existing investors? Are there any new investors? Because you also have names such as Ribbit, Matrix, and Tiger on your cap table.
Yeah, so all our existing investors have participated in the round. The round is led by Sequoia and GSE primarily. Ribbit, Matrix, YC, Tiger all have participated in the round, but it's led primarily by Sequoia and GSE.
Okay. But Harshal, did you really need to raise another round just 6 months after raising 100 million? Or, did you take a call that, it's a good market, there is funding tap available, so why not do it now than wait and perhaps, later the market dynamic might change? So what was really playing on your mind as you went through this fundraise compared to the previous one?
Yeah, no, a very valid question, Chandra. I think from our perspective, we don't needed a lot of cash for our day-to-day operations. We are not a very high cash burning company. We are a B2B company. Our burn rate is very, very low. The primary reason for raising funds is, you're right, like at a certain point, the price made sense, but it's not just because the valuation is high. It's because the opportunities that it opens up for us as a company, as we're expanding in the neo-banking side. It's a very large platform that we have to build, and not everything can be built in-house, right? So there are three things that we want to invest in, which this round helps us with. First is we want to invest a lot more on the banking side that we are building. It's a large platform play, and we need to invest a lot of more resources and money into it. The second is that we are looking at inorganic opportunities, acquisitions, and M&A a lot more, and a higher valuation mark helps us do that a lot more easily, even more important than cash. And thirdly, on the payment side, we are looking at expanding in markets outside India this year, especially this financial year, in a couple of markets in Southeast Asia. Again, that requires an additional amount of capital.
It's interesting that you mentioned Southeast Asia, because that's an ambition that Pine Labs also has, though it's in a completely different segment, a POS segment. But as a payment gateway, what opportunities do you see outside India? Is it easier to scale up outside India from a regulatory perspective? Because here again, it's a regulatory minefield. Something or other gets announced, every 6 months. But take us through, building for the world, what you've built in India.
To answer the regulatory question, Chandra, I think if you build a fintech company in India, you get used to it. As a company, you have to be used to regulation changing every 3-6 months. You have to find a way to move around, comply, pivot with that, and at the same time grow and build new things for customers. So I think operating in India for the last 6 years, that is one thing that we have definitely learned. And I think we can maximize on that capability as we go with Southeast Asia. But you're right. The regulatory markets in each country in this ecosystem is a different regulatory market. But from our perspective, I think we can find a way to manage the regulatory complexity. The most important thing is the opportunity is very high. I think these countries are a little bit behind India in terms of the adoption of digital payments, in terms of the ecosystem that is there. And I think somebody like us who has built and scaled that for India, we can take those capabilities and scale it in some of these markets. And I think that's what other players in the ecosystem are also doing.
So in terms of countries, in terms of, the segments that you will target, because here you've kind of built a niche targeting startups, SMEs. So would that be your sweet spot in, Southeast Asia? Which countries are you looking at?
Yeah, we'll want to carry our learnings that we have in India in these markets as well. So definitely like startups, SMEs, and tech companies, that is our focus in India, and that will continue to be our focus in these markets. And these markets are also seeing a surge in startup activity, surge in tech activity. So we believe that the markets are ripe for that kind of targeting. And I think from a capability perspective, what we are trying to take is payments, because payments is something we have acquired kind of a leadership position in India in the online payments world. We want to take that now to Southeast Asia because we have built a lot of products for the ecosystem which suit well in these markets as well. In fact, Southeast Asia was one of our ambitions earlier as well, but then a lot of things happened in the Indian ecosystem because of which we refocused our energy in India. But now I believe the time is right for us to go in some of these markets.
Right. You mentioned inorganic opportunities. So, would those be in neo-banking, because you have Razorpay X, and, for SME lending, you also have Razorpay Capital. So when you talk about inorganic opportunities, what segments are you exactly looking at?
Yeah, so if you talk about our banking side, like there's a lot of things that we need to build. Like building banking for businesses is a deep and broad problem. We've launched multiple things in last 1 year. We've launched corporate credit cards, we've launched current accounts, we've launched payroll solution, which has seen really good traction. We've launched vendor payments. But there's so many things that a business does with money, right? Like, for example, there's vendor payments, there's treasury operations, there's business reporting, there's financial accounting, and so on and so forth. There's so many things that a business has to do when it comes to managing money that we don't do today. So those are some of the areas where we look for inorganic opportunities. If we can find the right team and the right product that can scale up well within the Razorpay ecosystem, because we have a large merchant base, if we can build a product into our fold and help these merchants solve their problems better, I think those are the kind of opportunities we look at. To give an example, like Opfin is the great example of an acquisition that we made that has been very successful for us, because we acquired that company, and in last 1 year it has grown by almost 6 to 10x in terms of growth, because we have merchants who need a payroll solution. So similar products we look for.
Right. And in terms of the other things that you will use this for, do you have a target in mind in terms of growing the business? You also mentioned, leading player in the payment space. You, of course, compete closely with the likes of BillDesk. Can you give us a sense of how many transactions you process right now, or in terms of the millions of transactions that you process? How has it grown compared to the last year?
Yeah, so we do more than $35 billion of payment processing volume analyzed through our platform. It has grown by almost 3x in last year because of the kind of growth that we've seen. And similarly, our revenues have, because our revenue is primarily driven by the payment side. I think in the internet ecosystem, which is where we primarily operate, internet startup ecosystem, we are the largest player in that ecosystem, and that will continue to maintain. Like, we have players who have different focus areas and different target segments. For us, the target segment is internet startup ecosystem, and that we'll continue to capitalize on.
Right. And Harshal, the other part I wanted to come to was this second wave in the last week. There have been, again, a lot of changes in regulations for startups operating in commerce, in delivery, in logistics, in other areas. Have you seen any changes in payment behavior in the last week because of this whole confusion between essentials, non-essentials? Have people sort of pulled back on spends? Because, last year around this time, I think we saw credit cards see a huge dip. So in terms of buying behavior or spending behavior, any trends that you've seen so far in the last 2 weeks?
I mean, COVID is a humanitarian crisis across the world right now. And in India, of course, there's a second wave, which is underway, and a lot of things are changing in the ecosystem because of that. But if you talk about online payments, the space where we operate, even last year when COVID wave came in, we actually saw a surge in transactions. There was a small dip initially because of travel going down, about 30% dip. But then e-commerce and online payments and online gaming, on edtech, and all of these segments grew a lot more. And we saw a net increase in the amount of online transactions happening because people were stepping out less, so they were spending a lot more through online channels. In the second wave as well, although it's still fairly early, most of these changes have happened in the last couple of weeks, so still we don't have a lot of data. But the early trends show that online spending behavior has actually gone up. As offices are again getting shut, as social distancing norms are again coming in, as curfews are being imposed, people are staying home and spending more online through online channels. Of course, IPL is going on right now. We see a lot of spending driven by IPL through, for example, fantasy gaming and things like that. So because of that, net online spending has gone up in the last 1 or 2 weeks. But we'll see how long that trend continues. As social distancing increases, generally we see online spending behavior goes up.
Right. Final part of the interview, Harshal, in terms of the PAPG guidelines issued by the RBI, take us through how you see this, any challenges on the regulatory front that you see going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the PAPG guideline has actually been a welcome step, and we have welcomed it because payment gateways have been operated, and today they contribute to a significant amount of online payments that happen in the ecosystem. Like majority of online payments that you do happen through payment gateways. So I think it makes sense to have a direct regulation because it also helps us get a lot more clarity, a lot more it reduces a lot of ambiguity that existed without regulations because we were indirectly regulated through banks. So now, because of the direct regulation, I think we'll have a better say in how changes happen in this ecosystem. Also, the regulation has come in a much less heavy-handed fashion. The regulator has given us enough time and enough energy. Because of COVID, they've also extended timelines. So they give enough time to all of us to be able to comply with that and to be able to make that application. The requirements have also been reduced significantly. So the requirement of valuation and everything else also pretty low. So I think net it will be a positive thing for the ecosystem because as payment gateway plays an increasingly important role in driving digital payments in the country, working directly with the regulator will allow us to help shape direction on that in a much better way.
Right. And in terms of, another regulation that they came out in terms of not storing card data, again, what kind of impact is that going to have? How you're bracing for that? Because those rules will also kick in soon.
I'm glad that the regulator has extended timelines on that till end of the year. And at the same time, if you look at the circular, they have specifically called out that they want people, that they expect the industry to come up with solutions to solve the customer convenience, at the same time complying with that. I think the customer expectation on security and everything else is pretty critical because I think the regulator is worried about customers' card data leaking. We have seen a lot of incidents happen on that in the last couple of months. So I think the intent is clear that they want card data to be stored by a specific entity so that there's control of card information. But at the same time, they have specifically called out that people can use tokenization and other ways to give customers the same experience without storing card number on their side. I think we have enough time to comply and find ways to solve that problem. And I think that will happen before December deadline hits again.
And Harshal, we are in a year where everybody is talking about internet IPOs. You've raised another round of funding, valuing you at 3 billion. You're now 7 years old. So again, is this something running in your mind? Is this something that you will perhaps plan in the next year or two? Is that the next goal, perhaps?
Yeah, we are about six plus a little over 6 years old. But yeah, I think from our perspective on the payment side, I think we are almost breaking even. And I think if we were just a payments company, we could have planned an IPO right now. But our goals and ambitions are much broader. We want to expand a lot more in banking and lending before we decide to go for an IPO. And that's where this investment is going in. So I think we still need a couple of years to expand the banking side and lending side before we plan for an IPO. The goal for us is definitely to take the company public at a certain point of time. But I think it's still a couple of years down the journey for us.
But do you have ambitions for a universal bank license in that case?
I think a universal bank license is probably an overkill for us because it's too broad and comes with too much dependence. But some kind of banking license is something we'll strive for in the next couple of years. Whether it's an SFB,
like a small finance bank.
Yeah, whether it's an SFB or payment bank. I hope RBI or the regulators come up with something like a digital banking license, which will be actually better for us because we operate completely digitally, like the lines of what Singapore has launched. And our hope is that in next couple of years, regulation will catch up and we'll have a specific dedicated banking license, hopefully for neobanks in particular.
Right. Final question, Harshal. 2020 saw 11 unicorns. In 2021, we've seen 10 unicorns in the first 100 days. There are talks about a couple of more. How do you really see this as an entrepreneur? While some people are happy, a large part of the ecosystem is also worried that, is this happening too fast, too soon? Will there be a period of pain after this? How do you really see this? Or, does India have enough depth, breadth? Are these different kind of companies, more mature? What is your sense on what's happening today?
I mean, as an entrepreneur and as an ecosystem developer, and especially as a B2B company, I'm really happy about it. Like that more investment flowing into India just shows that a belief that not just India, but the entire world has on India right now, that India will definitely produce a very significant, large number of startups which will grow up to become big companies. And I think this year, while it is a lot of unicorns have come out, this is also a year when a lot of IPOs are being planned. So I think that will actually be the actual proof of how far the startup ecosystem is coming, and I am particularly watching out for that. But if you talk about just the unicorns coming in, yes, like unicorn is definitely becoming a unicorn is definitely not an end of journey. And we know that it's a milestone, it's a pit stop that refuels you. But there's a lot of hard work. Every funding, every round that you raise, and as your valuation goes up, the amount of responsibility and the amount of work that you have to go always goes up with that. So I think every startup that has become a unicorn has become because of the work that they have done in the last couple of years. But at the same time, they have a lot of work ahead of them, and I wish all of them best of luck as they scale up in the years. But personally, I'm pretty excited about it.
Right.
Especially.
Right. On that note, Harshal, such a pleasure talking to you as always. Thank you very much for joining us on Moneycontrol, and congratulations again on your new round. And here's wishing you and Razorpay the best.
Thank you, Chandra. Nice talking to you.